Alright there guys, and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be trying to answer the question, who is F1 the movie more catered towards? Is it the casual, the general person, the type of person that got into F1 maybe through Netflix's Drive to Survive series that they've been doing since 2018? Or is it more catered towards the actual F1 fan, like me? I've been watching the sport since 2007. Yeah, I've been watching the sport for nearly 20 years. 2007 European Grand Prix at the Nürburgring. That's the first F1 race I ever watched. So, we're not actually going to discuss whether the movie is good or not. That is not the question at hand here. I personally did enjoy the movie, but a lot of F1 fans did not, so you might have to watch the movie for yourself to see if you like it or not. So the answer to the question is actually a bit of a cop-out, mainly because it's both. The answer is actually both, and allow me to explain. So, the racing scenes of this movie, which is by far the best part of the movie, and the whole reason you'd go to watch an F1 movie in the first place, the racing scenes feel very close to the on-track action you see in F1 in real life. The first race of the movie is at Silverstone, and funnily enough, this coming weekend, it's also the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. But yeah, the on-track action in this movie is very, very, very close to the type of stuff you'd see in actual F1. It's just dramatised a lot more than it is in real F1. Obviously, because it's a movie, and they're having to fit like half of a season into a 2.5 hour movie. Well, more like into 2 hours, because the first half an hour, Sonny Hayes, who's the character that Brad Pitt plays, starts off the movie racing in the 24-hour Daytona in America before coming back to F1. So for the type of person that the F1 fan, someone like me, the racing scenes are absolutely the parts that cater to the F1 fan. Not all of them though. Like how for the Silverstone race, Sonny Hayes forgets what button he has to press to actually start his car on the formation lap. And you're only allowed to be about 5 seconds or so behind the car in front of you on a formation lap to get away with not having to start in the pit lane. Sonny Hayes was half a lap behind. He was still in Sector 2 of Silverstone. He was probably just getting to Maggots and Beckett's whilst everyone else was lining up on the grid, so he could warm his tyres up significantly more than anyone else. If you tried to do that in real life, you'd be starting from the pit lane, and all that tyre warming up would have been pointless because you'd be starting behind everyone, and you'd only be starting as they all got to the first corner. But they took crashes from... they took aspects of crashes from real F1 over the years and put into this movie. For example, Sonny Hayes' rookie teammate, Josh Pierce, he's at Monza, he's in P2, he's on the outside of Max Verstappen, going for a move at Parabolica, the final corner, on the outside, in the wet conditions, and he's on dry tyres, by the way, very dangerous. Sonny tells his team to tell Josh, don't go for the overtake now, do it going into turn 1. He doesn't listen, goes for the overtake on the final corner, hits a curb, and goes flying over the wall, fencing and railing, and into some trees. And then his car sets on fire. This was like aspects of different crashes from F1 over the years rolled into one. Like Jim Clark at Spa back in the 60s, the 70s, some around a good 50, 60 years ago, back when F1 was not safe in the slightest, and if you went off the track at high speed, you're probably going to crash badly and probably die. And the car setting on fire could have been a reference to when it happened to Niki Lauda, and James Hunt pulled him out the car and saved him, or when Romain Grosjean crashed in Bahrain 2020, went straight through a barrier and his car split in half and set on fire. Those were the crashes, at least the Grosjean crash was the one that it reminded me of the most, since that was only 5 years ago. But the parts of the movie that were catered more towards the casual was the more Hollywood aspects, the more cliches. It's a movie with Brad Pitt. He's got to be doing a bit. He's got to have at least one woman around him somewhere. And in this case, it was the first female technical director in F1, who basically risks her entire career to have a one-night stand with a driver in her own team. Sure, this is very unrealistic. This would be, I don't know, like akin to Esteban Ocon having an affair with his race engineer, because his race engineer is the only female race engineer in F1. It's like that. It's like her risking her whole career to have a one-night stand with the driver that she's the race engineer for. And people said this was like a really degrading scene and like plot line for her character, the technical director, and how it's like very degrading towards women. I personally don't agree with that statement. I actually think the fact that she did this it's a good thing, and I'll explain why. Over the past 10 years, we have had way too many freaking, feminist Mary Sue girl bosses. We're tired of it. Most of us are tired of it by now. Rey from the Star Wars sequel trilogy being the most perfect example of that type of character. The fact that this technical director, the fact that she would be willing to risk her whole career over a one-night stand with one of her own drivers, actually shows that she's a flawed person. She's not perfect. She still has flaws, like everyone does. It actually makes her feel more like a real character and person than a cliche. I actually think it's the opposite of a cliche in terms of the type of way it's shown. But yeah, that was definitely more for the sort of casual person who doesn't know a lot about F1 and would want to see a bit of the usual Hollywood aspect in this movie. Another case that I actually think reflects better on the female characters is there's a mechanic who has the wheel gun to take on and off the right front tyres of the cars. And in the very first pit stop of the movie back at Silverstone, when Josh Pierce comes in to change his tyres, she's struggling to get the tyre off, which is something that does happen in F1. It happened literally last weekend at Austria with both of the McLarens. So she screws up the taking off the right front tyre, which can happen. It's a normal thing that does happen from time to time in F1. And she then afterwards, when the other tyre goes on, she drops the wheel gun and Josh drives over the top of the wheel gun. That's not supposed to happen. And he was pissed at the end of the race and asked who dropped that wheel gun. And then she puts her hand up and he says, "Of course." But I actually think it's actually a better reflection on her than if she was just perfect at the pit stops for the whole movie, which for the rest of the movie she is anyway. She gets to the pit stops bang on every time for the rest of the movie. But because she screwed up the first time, it shows she's flawed. She's not perfect. She feels like an actual person. Like, if it was a male mechanic who was doing the pit stop and who was screwing who screwed up, no one would really care. I don't think anyone would even be bothered and would say it's degrading or reflects badly on that person. But because it's a woman, people feel the need to bring up that it's degrading and reflects badly on women. No, what it actually does is show that she's a flawed person. She feels like a real person who's flawed. She ain't perfect. She makes mistakes, just like everyone does. That's at least what I think. Another way that this movie caters more to the casual is the type of person that Brad Pitt's character is. You know, he's old, that's for sure. He gambles. He went bankrupt. He is a junkie. He was a junkie, like and sure, there's been complaints of this movie that he's been out of F1 for 30 years, because the movie actually begins, the very beginning scene of the movie is him driving an F1 back in the early 1990s, and he has like he's racing with Ayrton Senna, and he crashes into a wall and goes flying out of his car. If that was real life, it'd have killed him instantly, but because it's a movie, it doesn't kill him. And then he just disappears from F1, and then comes back 30 years later, and he's just as quick as he was when he was last in the sport. Yes, that's unrealistic. That's like saying Alan Prost would be just as good now as he was back in the 1980s when he was winning world titles. But it's a movie. Like, They paint the people complaining about the movie paint it as if he comes back and he just wins every race. He comes back and he immediately just wins every race. That ain't what happens. In fact, he doesn't win any race apart from the very, very last race of the year, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. That's the only race that he and that team actually win throughout the whole season. And because Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, was a producer on this movie, in Abu Dhabi, Sonny Hayes' car actually crashes into the exact same barrier that Nicholas Latifi's car did back in 2021, which brought out a safety car and then, of course, created all the controversy of Max snatching the title from Max Verstappen snatching the title from Lewis Hamilton on the final lap of the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Lewis having his 8th title snatched away from him right at the end. This time round, when that happened, when Sonny Hayes' car crashes into the wall, into the same exact wall, a red flag is flown instead of a yellow one. And for those who don't know F1, the red flag means the race is immediately stopped, and after everything is sorted, will be restarted at the grid like they did right at the start of the race. Although Lewis also gets himself taken out of the race right at the end, like Josh, the Sonny Hayes teammate, going into into turn 1 in Abu Dhabi, they both crash into each other. So Sonny Hayes, who's in P3 at the time, takes over into P1 and wins the race. It's funny because the two Apex cars, which is the team that Sonny and Josh drive for, they literally do what Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez did to Lewis Hamilton at the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, holding Lewis up massively to help the teammate. These two do exactly the same thing. And also, this season takes place during the 2023 F1 season. I thought it took place in last year's season. No, it takes place the year before that. because the Kick Saubers, which are, of course are black and green cars now, back then they were Alfa Romeo and they were red and white, and they were red and white in this movie. They weren't black and green like they are now. But they actually took footage and like parts of actual races that happened, like Perez getting hit off at turn 1 in the 2023 Mexican Grand Prix. That still gets shown as it happened, but with the Apex cars put into the action. I think that was a really cool feature of the movie, how they put actual parts of real F1 races that happened that year and changed it and put into the Apex cars. I thought that was a really, really cool feature. But yeah, that is going to be how my answer to the question, who is F1 the movie more catered towards? The casual or the F1 fan like me? Of course, I answered this right at the start. It's kind of both at the same time. Which one does it cater more to? Even that's a tough question. Maybe the F1 fan, because when the racing action is happening, as F1 fans, it looks just like it would in a regular F1 race in real life. Oh, and the last thing I'd like to mention, there's a little Easter egg. There's plenty of Easter eggs in this movie, but the only one I noticed is that Josh Pierce's phone, his notification sound on his phone, is the noise that plays when you're watching F1 on TV when a team radio comes up. I thought that was a very clever Easter egg, and it's the only one I noticed. But that's going to be the end of the video. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and until we meet again, see you in the next one.